Okay, so we're up to page Ein Gimel. We started yesterday the third way that the author here says we can emulate or connect to the Midah of Malchus, and it had to do with making oneself, putting oneself in a position vis-a-vis Malchus as one would towards a woman, towards one's wife. And therefore, he kind of spoke about how since Malchus is the feminine sphere, the receptacle for all of the bracha that's coming down from the spheres above it, which then takes that energy and gives it forth into the world, so a person is able to be part of that flow only when he himself is connected to a female, meaning a man should marry. And only when a man is married can he connect himself in a way which makes him a direct recipient of that influence from Malchus, and not just a general recipient from the Shefa that comes into the world in general, but being specifically and directly involved in that kind of sharing of energy, and that comes through one's wife. And when Malchus, which is Shechinah, sees that a person is connected to a female, a woman, in order for him to give to her the bounty and blessing that he's required to from the Torah, that is taking care of her needs and clothing her and feeding and providing for her needs, then the Shekhinah, as it were, bestows upon this person the bounty that he needs to be a conduit through which will flow that bounty to his wife. So when a person's taking it for himself, he's actually interested only in himself, and for that reason, let's say, doesn't get married. So he's actually going to be cutting himself off from blessing. However, if he positions himself in a way where he's now responsible for providing for the needs of others, that will initiate a flow from Malchus to him, and from him to those he wants to share with, his wife and his children, and so forth and so on. So it turns out then that the bracha of a person actually comes about in the merit of his wife. So the sages say that kol shori v'lo isha shori lo bracha. Anybody who's without a woman, without a wife, he has no blessing. A woman, therefore, a wife, is a source of a man's blessing and a source of a man's happiness. And we find, for example, when Rivka, when Sarah was alive, there was a light that was lit. The candle was constantly lit, and there was always light found in the tent. There was a special blessing in the dough, in the home, meaning with the food, and there was a benevolent cloud hanging over the tent, giving them protection from the sun, and give them shade, and so forth and so on. And when Sarah was nifter, the light was extinguished, the blessing from the flour, from the dough, was removed, and the clouds, protecting clouds, dissipated. And then when Yitzchak married Rivka, and Rivka was brought into the tent of Sarah in her stead, so the light was kindled, the blessing returned to the dough, and the clouds came and gathered over the tent in order to give them protection again. So we see here an example of how the wife, the woman, is the source of blessing in the home. As long as Sarah was alive, the blessing was there, the light and the food and the protection. When she died, it went away. When Yitzhak married, so this is connected to, we didn't mention this yesterday, but it's connected to the point that we did mention yesterday, which is, therefore, when a person becomes married, his house becomes a place for the dwelling of the Shekhinah, connecting to Malchus, which makes his home like a Beis HaMikdash. So this home is a Mikdash Me'at. And just like there was the light from the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash, so in the merit of his wife, there becomes light in the home. And just like there were karbonos in the Beis HaMikdash, which provided food for the Mizbeach, as it were, for the altar, so too when a person's married, there's blessing one's food and home and supplies at home. And just as in the Beis HaMikdash, there were the clouds of glory over the tent of meeting and over the Beis HaMikdash, protective tents, clouds of glory. So when a person marries, he has this protective, enveloping energy around the home. And we mentioned that his relationship with his wife, the epitome of that relationship takes place in the innermost sanctuary of their home. That's the Holy of Holies. That's their room of intimacy. And the place where they're intimate corresponds to the center of the universe, the center of the Beis Hamikdash, the center of the Holy of Holies, which is the ark upon which you had the Kruvim, the two figures, male and female, which looked at each other lovingly. And underneath all of that, you had the Torah. Inside that ark, you had the Torah. So you see here, therefore, that a man's success, bounty, and blessing, physically and also spiritually, is dependent on entering in that relationship with a woman, being in a loving, nurturing relationship of marriage. And therefore, it serves that a person has not only the physical bounty, but it actually enables him to become a practical receptacle for Torah as well. So a person is not able to learn Torah properly and fully until he's married. So these are some of the ideas that we discussed yesterday. And that being said, it now gives exceptions as to how, even if a person is not able to be with his wife intimately, he would still have an element of the Shechinah with him. Why? Because the person is supposed to place himself between these two female aspects, the Shechinah on the one hand and his wife on the other. If for whatever reason he can't be with his wife, he still needs to have that female, feminine component in his life in order to make him an Adam Sholem. Because we say a person without his wife, without a soulmate, is only half. And therefore, a person has to have that female component, like we said, male and female, he created them. That a person is only whole when he has both the male aspect and the female aspect. If he can't be together with his wife, at least the feminine aspect is nurtured and created by his connection with the Shekhinah. So what does he do, for example, if he's on the way, he's on a journey, when he can't be with his wife at that time, or he's learning Torah in a way where he is not able to be with his wife at that time, or, for example, if she is a nida, she's spiritually impure, and they can't be together intimately at that time. So where will the Shekhinah be at that point? How will the Shekhinah rest upon him? And this is what he's going to address in this next section of the chapter. Remember, Mordechai, we had your question about Moshe Rabbeinu separating from Tzipporah, which we have to address. And there was some other point that we said we were going to address as well. Rachamim raised a point that we said we were going to address. Maybe we can remember it as we go along. In any case, sometimes a person separates from his wife for one of three reasons. We said it yesterday. I summarized it now, so we'll read it through here quickly. If she's nida, or if he is learning Torah and therefore separate from his wife for the weekday. Hagimel, the third, he's on the way and he's guarding himself from sin. You see the qualification from the fact that he's guarding himself from sin, implying there's a prerequisite for having the Shekhinah with him. If he separates from his wife, he can't ensure that the Shekhinah will be with him if he is not preserving his purity. Therefore, the point is, if he's separate from his wife, he can still maintain his connection to the Shekhinah as long as he's not transgressing. In these times, the Shekhinah is connected and cleaving to him, and it doesn't leave or depart him, so that he should not be left alone. Because the true and proper state for a person is to have the combination of both male and female. So this is now new material. In order for the Shekhinah to be found by him, to act as a type of partner with him, he has to make sure he doesn't do anything which is going to banish the Shekhinah from him. And therefore, when he, for example, is going on the way on a journey without his wife, he should be very quick to earn the merit of praying the Hispalel Tfilas Ederech, the wayfarer's prayer, v'lechos b'Torah, and to take hold of the Torah. Shebesibazo Shechinah shehi shmiras ederech omeres l'tamid. The Shechinah, which guards one on the way, will stand for him always. So what he's saying here is that the way to ensure that the Shekhinah will remain with him when he's departing from his wife and going on a journey is to pray Tefillas Adorning. Clearly, one of the important things that he has to do here is prayer, because we said that prayer is connected the peh, the mouth. And the mouth is also connected to Malchus. Where we spoke earlier, remember about there being a bris to the tongue? So prayer is part of Malchus, and therefore a way of ensuring that he's going to be enveloped with the midah of Malchus when he's not together with his wife is to be engaged in prayer. And this is a specific prayer, the prayer of Tefillas Adorning. The prayer of Tefillas Adorning is designed in a way to ensure that the Malchus, the feminine aspect, which will accompany him on his way, will be with him in the merit of his being engaged in prayer. That's the first thing. And the second thing is through limud Torah, through learning Torah. Remember, Torah is Tiferes. And Tiferes, which is Torah, gives down to the right and the left, which we said is Netzach and Hod, Mishnah, and Netzach, which is going to be Mikra, and Hod, which is Mishnah, and that's going to give down to Yesod, which is Gemara, which then gets down into Malchus, which is Halacha. Therefore, the person is going to ensure that he's going to be encapsulated with the protective influence of Malchus if he's engaged, number one, with prayer, because prayer is Malchus, and number two, he's learning Torah, which is going to initiate a flow down through those spheros, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchus, where Tiferes then is also going to result in a strengthening of Malchus. His limud Torah is going to result in a strengthening of the Malchus. So in this way, when a person is davening and learning, he is going to be connecting to the midah of Malchus and ensuring that the Shechinah is going to continue to be resting upon him along his way. Because not only through prayer, but also through learning the Torah, the Shekinah is going to be standing with him. As long as he is guarding himself from transgressing, by not taking care, by not expressing the needs or inclinations that one has towards women in a way other than being with his wife in a permitted fashion, if he guards himself in this way, then when he learns Torah, that will also bring upon him the midah of Malchus. And similarly, when he can't be with his wife, for example, when she's a nida, Shechinah medislo, the Shechinah will also be with him, when he observes the laws of nida appropriately. So again, it's not just going to be enough if he's not with his wife to be, let's say, praying and learning in order to maintain the presence of the Shekhinah in his life. They'll also have to be coupled with a state of purity, right? Where he's not planting his seed in a foreign field. Rather, he has to be careful that his energy is only used to irrigate, right, the Malchus, his tree. And if that's what he does, afterwards, Belel Taharasa, on the night of her purity, when she goes to the mikveh, or Belel Shabbos, or on Shabbos night, or Bavo Min Haderech, or if he comes, or when he's coming home from his journey. Right here, he's referring to all three categories. Going to the mikveh because they were separated as a result of her being nida, or on Leil Shabbos as a result of his separating himself from his wife during the week because of his dedication to Torah study and being together only on Shabbos. Or, for example, if they're separated because of his being on the way without her, they're being reunited, of course, when he comes home. Kol echad mehen zman bilas mitzvahi. Each of these times makes the act of intimacy a special mitzvah, either mikveh night, or Shabbos night, or coming home from a journey. Right? Sometimes all three can coincide. His wife might have been impure. He might have been away. And the first opportunity they have to be together is on Shabbos. Shechinah niftachas lema'ala lekabel neshamas kedoshos. At this time, the Shechinah opens herself up in order to receive the holy souls. What is this a reference to? Since we said the Shechinah is the feminine, and we said that that's Malchus. We said that Malchus is also Eretz, right? That's the spiritual firmament. So, because of guarding oneself properly and maintaining that connection with Malchus throughout separation, that actually results in a stimulating of the desire of Malchus to receive. So Malchus, which is Eretz, which is Shechinah, opens itself up to receive the special influence from on high on this time of Shabbos, at this time of Shabbos, which means that the midah of Malchus is kind of quite open, and desirable of receiving the souls that would be brought down from the spiritual realm into the physical realm through Malchus at that time, so that the couple which is together at these times after separation for these reasons, when that separation has been observed in purity, are actually opening themselves up to receiving especially holy souls. And therefore at this time it is befitting that he should literally be together with his wife. And in this way the Shechinah will always be with him. And the children that are born at that time, the children that are conceived at that time are going to have extremely very special holy souls. And this is one of the reasons why, for example, the Gemara says, and it's brought down in the Halacha, that the Onis Talmid Chachamim is from Erev Shabbos to Erev Shabbos. The Torah scholars are together with their wives from Erev Shabbos to Erev Shabbos. It doesn't necessarily mean they're away from their home and they couldn't be with their wives during the week. They'd only come home for Shabbos. No, it means even if they are home. But they're dedicated entirely to Torah study during the week. If they were to be together with their wives at that time, since it is a mundane time, it's not a time which is infused with holiness, souls that are brought down from the spiritual realm into this world during those weekdays are more subject to becoming tainted by the forces of the Chitzonim. Because remember, we said there are klipos which are surrounding the Malchus. And therefore, if neshamas are coming down from the spiritual realm into Malchus, which is the feminine, and those souls would then be passed on to this man who is a vehicle for transmitting between the Malchus and his wife, right? There could be something which obstructed during that transmission. And the souls could be touched or tainted by these negative forces, the chitzonim. So that souls which are actually conceived, meaning brought down into the body and fertilized at that time, are likely to be subject to impurities. And it's for this reason that the tzaddikim, the Talmid Chachamim, make an effort to refrain from being with their wives during the week. If this happens to be mikveh night, so it's a different story, like he says here. It becomes a special mitzvah, and in the merit of that mitzvah, the soul will hopefully have a special protection, and it will be kind of like a Shabbos night. Yeah? But generally speaking, this is the reasoning behind why the Talmid Chachamim are specifically with their wives on Shabbos. Why? Because Shabbos is a time when the Chitzonim are cut away. They're removed, and their influence over the world is much less. And therefore, when the couple is together, any soul that was coming down, it would be fertilized at that time, would be coming from a much holier place, and it would be coming down in a much holier way. So that the offspring that would be resulting from such a union would be in a much higher place as well. And therefore he's saying these are times where it's particularly propitious to be together with one's wife, where the Malchus herself is open and desirable of becoming fertilized with this holy soul, and then passing that very holy soul through the man for the purpose of providing it for his wife, for her to be a recipient of these holy souls. And this time, therefore, it is particularly appropriate to be intimate with his wife. Ubezei Shechinah tamid imo, and in these ways the Shechinah will be with him always. Ken perishu bezor, so too was explained in the Zohar, Parshas Bereishis. Hapekida liishtoi tzarich shetiyeh dafka bezman sheshchina b'makoyma. The Zohar says that when one visits one's wife, it should be at a time when the Shekhinah is in its place. What does it mean in its place? That the Shekhinah is properly aligned, that the Shekhinah is properly balanced, and that the Shekhinah is unobstructed. Dainu, when is this? Shehi ben shtei zroos. When the Shekhinah is properly aligned between the two arms. What are these two arms? I believe it's referring to Chesed and Gvura, which we said correspond to the right and the left arm. So that Shekhinah should be properly balanced between Chesed and Gevurah, which is Tiferes, right? And Malchus should be direct underneath Tiferes. Not at a time when there are Gvuros in the world, Dinim in the world, but when there are Chasadim in the world, so that everything is leaning to the right. We spoke about how Tiferes should be directed towards the right as well, even though it's a central sphere. Chesed can draw Tiferes away from Gvura and towards the direction of the right in order to be mamtik the dinim. This would be the most propitious time. When does this happen? On these types of occasions. On Shabbos, or when a person has been away on a journey but he's guarded himself, or if she has been impure and she's now purified, right? And they're together. So in this way, he is now in an act of giving to her, providing for her needs, a need which has developed because of his absence from her. And when this happens, holy souls will come down. That's when a person should be with his wife. Dainukshi ben shtei zoros, when she, the Malchus, and also the woman, is between these two zoros, between right and left. She's not leaning towards the left, but she's being drawn over towards the right. However, when there are difficult times for the community, here this would be an example of dinim. Malchus is not going to be properly aligned. It's going to be drawn to the left. And the proof of that is that there are judgments taking place in the world. Difficult times, hardships, famine, war, and things like this. Shein Shechinah ben shtei zros, which is an indication that the Shechinah, meaning the meat of Malchus, is not properly harmoniously balanced between right and left. Rather, it's drawn towards the left because there are dinim in the world, asur. At that time, it's forbidden to be with one's wife. Why? Because he would be drawing down tainted souls. That was explained in part of the Zohar. We find the same thing, that when there's a famine, a person should not be engaged in having relations. The simple meaning is because how can you be bringing children in the world when there's not enough food to go around? Yeah, but according to the inner Kabbalistic explanation, the point is, if there is famine in the world, it's an indication that there is dinim in the world. And if there's dinim in the world, it's an indication that there are dinim in Malchus. And Malchus is being drawn to the left and obstructed with klipos. And if you're together with your wife, you're going to be bringing down lefties, spiritual lefties. What's that? We don't want to be left-wingers. We want to be right-wingers. Yeah, spiritually to the right in Chesed. Okay? Oh, you wanted to speak about Moshe Rabbeinu, right? So, well, what's the pshat there? That Moshe Rabbeinu was married to Tzipporah. However, he separated from her, from intimacy. Right? I don't know. I personally don't know. I don't know personally how long. I don't know. Maybe there were periods. But we find that Miriam was complaining to Aaron about the Moshe's wife because he took a Cushite woman. Of course, the mistaken explanation of that is that being from Cush, she was black, and they were bigots, and they didn't want him married to a Cushite woman. That's of course incorrect. That's not the point, right? But rather, we find that after that complaint, God calls Aaron and Miriam outside quickly and says, "Hey, I want to talk to you." And he says to him, if I speak to other prophets with all types of signs and mysteries and so forth and so on, Moshe is not like that. I speak to him openly, like a person speaks face to face. Well, tell me, what does that answer have anything to do with their complaint that he took a wife from Africa? It's like apples and oranges. They complain that Moshe took a woman from Cush, let's say Ethiopia. Yeah? So God reprimands them by calling them outside and saying, Moses' prophecy is different than everybody else's. Well, what does the reprimand have anything to do with the complaint? So rather, right, our sources say the point was this. Miriam was complaining to Aaron about Moses' wife because he took a Cushite woman. Who's a Cushite woman? Meaning she was Cush, she was outstanding. A Cushi also refers to somebody who's outstanding. Moses' wife is outstanding. Why is he separating himself from her? He shouldn't be separating himself. What's wrong with her? She's a wonderful woman. She's a tzedekes. She's a righteous woman. She's a Cushite. She's outstanding. Why is he separating from her? Well, God called him out and said, I want to talk to you. You have to realize, Moses' experience of prophecy is different than other prophets like yourselves. Yeah? Miriam's complaint was, we haven't separated from our spouses, but we commune to God. Why is Moses separated from his? And God says, for me to speak to you, you have to prepare yourself. And even if you do, I might communicate with you, I might not. But Moses is not like that. I engaged Moshe in the experience of prophecy from my own initiative any time. And if he were to be with his spouse in a state of impurity that would result from that before going to the mikveh, that would be very dangerous to him. Just like you guys have been called automatically, all of a sudden, without expecting it, and you were with your spouses, you haven't gone to the mikveh. And they were running out of the tent shouting, water, water. They felt they were on fire. They wanted to go into a mikveh. They took the plunge. And now they can communicate to God. God says, listen, you see the difference? I can appear on my own accord to Moshe at any time. He has to be ready to receive that message in a state of purity. You're not used to that because I don't communicate with you that way. You go to the mikveh, you learn, you pray, you prepare yourselves, and maybe I'll come and maybe I won't. Yeah? But Moses is different. So your question is, how is it that Moshe was able to have prophecy if he was separate from his wife? Right? How was he able to attain that level? So one answer that you suggested, I think, was based on difference between Ruach HaKodesh and Devorah. Yeah? That might be true on some level, but in the end of the day, in order for a person to get Nevuah, he has to be connecting to the Spheros. And if in order to connect properly to the Spheros, he has to be married and presumably engaged in the act of intimacy, then how could Moshe attain that if he was separate? Right? That's basically your question, correct? So you have to say from here that the fact that Moshe was married enabled him to provide for all of the needs of his wife, aside from this act of intimacy. The act of intimacy, it's true, on his level, would have interrupted. Not because the act of intimacy would bring him on a lower level. That's not the point. But the act of intimacy would result in the impurity that he would have to become purified from in order to have his nevuah. And since God could have come to him at any time, he had to avoid being in the state of impurity. But it's not that being with his wife per se would have prevented him from attaining that level. And refraining from being with his wife wouldn't prevent him from getting it either. Why? Because number one, he was married, and number two, he was connected with the Shekinah. Right? So it would be like these examples that we just like as we saw here, that a person could be on his way, even though he's not with his wife, and still have the Shekinah with him. Or he could be learning Torah during the week, refraining from being with his wife only on Shabbos, and still have the Shekinah with him during the week. So the same thing with Moshe Rabbeinu. Even though he was refraining from his wife, he could still have the Shechinah with him. And there might have been times that he actually...
You can substitute it.
What's that?
You can substitute your wife for...
Yeah, I don't know if everybody could do that. Everybody wouldn't be on the level to do that. In these cases, it's temporary, while she's a nida, or while he's learning during the week, or while he's away. Maybe for Moshe, it was a more long-term thing. But it could be that maybe from time to time, he was with his wife, and then immediately toveled. But generally, he had to avoid that type of a situation. So therefore, we spoke about Ben Azai as an exception of a person who could be so married to the Torah that serves the place of being with one's wife. And that could be an answer regarding Moshe Rabbeinu as well. However, in the case of Moshe, he was actually married too. Let's say this Daveg in Basa Melech. What? Higher than Ruach HaKodesh, yeah. So what are you suggesting, that if a person were on the level of Ruach HaKodesh, he wouldn't separate from his wife? They didn't separate from their spouses, right? So you see, it's not that the act of intimacy will bring about the ability of a person to have Ruach HaKodesh or prophecy. He needs to be engaged in marital life and living in order to make his midos properly perfected and polished. He has, in order to enable his Torah learning to be correct and accurate. So, according to Torah teachings, he actually needs the context of marriage and the act of intimacy to promote his spirituality. And however, and that should reach to the highest levels, even of prophecy. However, there are some exceptions where, as long as a person is married and engaged in the activity in the dynamic of marriage, even if he's not involved in the intimate aspect of marriage, he can still maintain that level of spirituality. How so? By connecting to Torah and prayer in a very intense way. And that's what Moshe Rabbeinu was doing. So for most prophets, you would actually need the context of marriage and the specific aspect of intimacy to attain those very high levels. And there's no contradiction. And that's the same thing with Moshe as well. The contradiction was not the act of intimacy that would prevent him from having prophecy, but rather it was more of a technical issue. The act of intimacy results in a type of temporary impurity which he couldn't take the risk of bringing upon himself, since God could have appeared to him at any time. And that's why he refrained. Since he refrained, how was he able to maintain the midah of Malchus, even though he wasn't involved in the physical act of intimacy? Number one, because he was engaged in the dynamic of marriage, number one. And number two, because he was married to the Torah and to prayer. And that took the place of that physical female aspect. Somebody who wants to become connected to the Basa Melech. Who's that? The sphere of Malchus. Right? The Basa Melech. The daughter of the king. The princess. The Melech is going to be Keser. The Bas Melech is going to be Malchus. So a person who wants to cleave to Midas of Malchus, Shalot Tipared Mimenu Lo'olam, that she should not depart from him ever, he has to adorn himself with all different types of ornaments and with regal, lovely clothing. What is he referring to here? The keshutim and the adornments are the Torah and the mitzvos. The malbushim, those are the midos, the attributes. Vehem tikunei midos and niskaros kulam. And this is involved in rectifying all of the midos that have been mentioned earlier in this book, from Keser all the way down. So the person who is perfecting himself with Torah and mitzvos and prayer, and polishing himself in all of the areas of the midos that we've been discussing here, this is a way of ensuring that the midah of Malchus will not depart from him ever. V'achar shetiken atzmo b'tikuneha, and once he has repaired and perfected himself in this way, yichaven the kablo alav b'yoisoi oisek b'Torah, he should have in mind that he will receive upon himself this influence of Malchus through his being engaged in Torah study, v'noise all mitzvos b'soid kavonos yichud tomid, and in this way he will also take upon himself the burden of fulfilling all of the mitzvos and have in mind the intention of the yichud, the unification of God's name through the performance of the mitzvos. Like we said, before fulfilling a mitzvah, a person says the formula, L'shem yichud kudsha b'richud shchinte. In the name of the unification of God and the Shekinah, I will perform this mitzvah. And that's the Zohar. Mitzvah is related to the word tzvat, tzevet, which means like together. So that through fulfilling the mitzvah, a person it causes himself to cling to God, and also causes the male and the female aspect of God to be united. Umiyad hinises lo veina parashas mimeno, and then the Shechinah will immediately marry herself to him. That's the Bas Melech. Will cleave to him and will not depart from him, as long as he's learning Torah, fulfilling the mitzvos, and praying. V'zeh b'tnai she'yitayev yikadosh atzmo. But this is on condition that he purifies and sanctifies himself. He purifies himself by refraining from transgressions. He sanctifies himself by proactively fulfilling the mitzvos. Then the princess, the daughter of the king, will cleave to him. Once he has become purified and holy, then he should have in mind to fulfill for her this wife of his that he has taken, this spiritual bride that is the daughter of the king, that's the Bas Melech, that's the Malchus. He should provide for her the share, that's the food. The ksus, that's the clothing. The oina, that's the act of intimacy. Corresponding to she'er, the food, would be the Torah and the mitzvahs that he's learning, would provide like spiritual sustenance for the Shekinah. The ksus would be the protective covering, so that Malchus should be protected from the chitzonim, from these negative occluding forces. This can be done, I think it's through the mitzvah of talis and tefillin, that a person envelops himself with talis and wears the tefillin. This is like clothing. So he provides in this way protective clothing from the Shekinah to protect her from these negative influences. Va'oina, he visits her intimately. How is this? Perhaps through prayer. Prayer is also called pekida, lifkod. Lifkod is Hashem. And the word pekida, to visit, is also used, as we saw here in this text, for being intimate with one's wife. So maybe share would be the Torah learning that's providing the sustenance for the Shekinah. The ksus would be the mitzvahs associated with clothing, that's talis and tefillin. And ona would be visiting the Shekinah through prayer. Shem shloisha dvarim shechayav adam nishto. These are the three things that a person is obligated to provide for his wife. Oh, here, maybe he'll elaborate on them. Ho'echad, the first one is, lashpia la b'chol ma'asav shefa min yamin. To provide for her with all of his deeds, the bounty and blessing which is coming from the right. And this will be mazoina, her share, her food, her sustenance. What would that be? If it's coming from the right, that's Torah. There's a note here where it says, Hainu limud Torah, shenikra mazoin and nefesh, which is called food for the soul. Okay?
Torah is food.
Yes, Torah is food for the soul. Hasheni, the second one, l'chasoy soleha mitzad hagvura, to cover over her and protect her from the side of gvura, which is to the left, where the chetzonim are. shelo yishlotu bo achitzonim, shelo yetzad yetzer hara be'esek mitzvosav. So there should not be any aspect of yetzer hara in his performance of the mitzvos. Kogon laha'an asaguf. For example, he refrains from having intentions that would involve indulging in pleasures of the body. V'tikvas hakavod, or the anticipation of honor. Hamadume v'chiyote, or all these other types of imaginary pleasures that a person would like. Sheyetzer hara matzui ba'osei mitzvah, when he has these intentions, the yetzer hara would be found among those mitzvos. V'borachas mimeno, and the malchus, the daughter of the king, flees from these enemies. V'pnei shehi erva, because this element of the yetzer hara is like an erva, like a foreign woman, like an adulteress, like a concubine, which the man would be taking with him within himself, and that would cause the malchus to depart. Right? The malchus doesn't mind a person having a wife if it's a physical wife, but if he takes on another spiritual wife, namely the yetzer hara, so then she flees from that. She doesn't want to have a competitor. And therefore, what he's saying is a person has to enclothe her, or enclothe himself, or maybe both, to protect and guard from the possibility that foreign improper thoughts would enter into his intentions when he prays or does the mitzvahs and so forth and so on, and that would be taking on like a concubine, like an adulteress, or a secret kind of romance.
An adulteress.
Yeah, I use that term. Yeah, an adulteress, and that would be like erva. Im ken tzarich lechasois ha'erva ulahastira tamid, and therefore you have to cover over the erva. That's the foreign thoughts, the foreign intentions, the desire for pleasure coming from the left, which is the yetzer hara, like an adulteress, and keep her away from the home he's trying to create with the malchus. Ulahastira tamid shelo yishlad ba, in order that she should not have any sway over the malchus. Leave that foreign woman out of his life. Ketzad, kol ma'asav l'shem shemaim, bli chelek liyetzer hara, that all of his deeds should be l'shem shemaim, without any stirring up of the yetzer hara. V'chen tefillin v'tzitzis, hem meginim gedolim ba'ado, shelo yishletu hachitzonim ba. Very good. This is right. This is what I had originally thought. Yeah, that specifically mitzvahs of tefillin and tzitzis also guard and protect the malchus, that she should not be subject to the sway of this sorceress, this adulteress, this seducer, the yetzer hara, this harlot, spiritual prostitute. That's,
okay. Do you have any more?
That's the yetzer hara. V'yeh yagil behem, that he should be accustomed, therefore, and regular to fulfilling these mitzvos in order to protect the malchus, to guard and protect the daughter of the king, in order to preserve her purity. And she should remain untainted. Okay? That's the second one. So we discussed how we provide food for his spiritual wife, that is the malchus, the daughter of the king, by learning Torah. Secondly, he provides clothing for her by guarding her and protecting her from the influence of the sorceress, the yetzer hara, by making sure he banishes any negative intentions, which would be the inroads through which the yetzer hara, this adulteress, would have a way of getting into the home he's trying to create the malchus, or alternatively, by performing the mitzvah of talis and tefillin, which guard and protect the malchus from the yetzer hara, from the chitzonim. And then the third thing would have to do with oina, the visitation. Leyachada ima tiferes, in order to fuse her together with the tiferes, that is malchus to tiferes, ba'oinas kriyat shema, during the time of the kriyat shema. Oh, I said prayer. He says oina is like oinas kriyat shema, the appointed time for kriyat shema. But it also has to do with prayer. By keeping the appointed times, he is fulfilling the times as he's obligated to his spiritual wife, that is the Shechinah, the times of prayer. B'kfiyasi to the Torah, and also fixing times for Torah study. Ukesheyikva oina l'chol davar, when he fixes a time for these types of mitzvahs, yichaven shezeu oinas Shechinah, he should have in mind that these are times where he is visiting, being poiked the Shechinah at the appointed times. Bas HaMelech, the daughter of the king, v'yesh remez lezeh b'tikunim, and there are hints and suggestions to this idea as part of the Zohar, in Tikkunei Zohar, Tikkun Vav. But I think we get the general gist of the idea. That's a very beautiful way of concluding then this section about Malchus and how we can connect to Malchus, having empathy with Malchus in its exile is one, number two through humility, and number three through working on developing and nurturing our relationship with Malchus as a relationship with a female, and that corresponding and paralleling the way in which we nurture our relationship with our wives. And the two go hand in hand. And in this way, a person will be connecting to Malchus, bring upon himself much bounty and blessing, physically and spiritually. May that be the case. Amen.